delighted to see that there are more than the speakers in the room. And we are now going to look at nature, or revaluing nature, or as a counterpoint to all the talk we've been having about society and economics. We're going to look at challenges to natural capital, or the ways in which we value and use natural capital. And we have a couple of very interesting papers to start with, that, to judge by the titles and the abstracts, are about plastics. So that moves me to say that this session is not about the Anthropocene, it's about the plasticine. So our first speaker is do some background. Away you go, sir.
Thank you very much.
Would you like this?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to speak about something different about polymers. We are three next speakers from this branch of chemistry, and I would like to explain the sustainability of these materials which are from renewable resources, which are biodegradable and or bio-based. We know about the problems we have with plastic generally, and I think Professor Kelly will speak about these problems. And if we want to control and reduce this negative impact of polymers, we move to the production of and the use of plastic with a higher level of sustainability, particularly to biodegradable or bio-based plastics. We have to identify and remove all barriers within all of the value chain to help to widespread use of this type of materials. We have here two types, bio-based, which are from renewable resources, and biodegradable plastics. Yeah, I don't know why.
No, the next one. Want the next one? Okay.
Yeah, just very shortly, what are bioplastics are based on these sources, and what is very important. During the production, we have less of carbon dioxide emissions, and also they are biodegradable. So,
okay.
This just to show that polylactic acid is the polymer which is biodegradable polymer which is already used, the most used. Then we have starch. And the future is here, is cellulose. Already we use bioplastic in different fields, and mostly, like generally, we use polymers. Also, these biodegradable polymers are used in packaging, shopping in catering products. Medical products is a very important issue because we have very high added value of these products, sanitary and gardening. And but we need these plastics in very different fields. For example, there is some competition between the automotive industry, and Toyota has the first place in making these plastic biocomposites the production. And here I put some picture, very important people from companies, plastic companies, are sitting here, and the slogan is better life and bright future. We must explain this, why it is. And
okay.
To understand, I took this motto that This understanding can give us scientists and professionals of all disciplines, which solve important problems of today. And understanding also has the potential to significantly impact now we think about and work to achieve an acceptable world. To explain our materials, I like one model. And this model was developed by these two guys, McDonough and Michael Braungart. Probably you know this. It's a sustainable development matrix fractal diagram, which is based on these Hanover principles, where these 9 subject areas was established by the base of the society. We have many models, and usually they have the social, environmental, economic issues, and somewhere in the middle is sustainable development. These guys they put this single model, but they use the fractals, and they call this triangle is cradle to cradle, not cradle to day, but cradle to cradle, and this fractal nature, it's difficult to explain very shortly, but it is interrelated all together, and they call the ecology, economy, profit, and equity people, and it is on the very base level, but then they distinguish also, they optimize or balance each of these to utility, means satisfaction, and effectiveness, efficiency, and the model looks like this. And I will explain our sustainable polymers through these 9 issues. It means through the profit trap, planet trap, and people trap. First, profit of economic capital trap. Create a very I think you can see the growth of plastic this from 2008 to 2015, and it's exponential. And also the changing of our region for production capacity. You can see that, for example, North America is growing, also Asia. It means it's a big change in the dynamic of these, and bioplastics are really something which will bring new bioeconomy. And in a way, it's very clear, because if we have biodegradable polymers, it means we can put to the ground, and we can compose them, so no waste, no landfills. Okay. Recognize interdependence. Everything is integrated. In this case, the understanding is that we must recognize, in fact, maximize the effectiveness of interdependent relationships. I took this example. We have production of polylactic acid from starch, and we can produce through dextrose lactic acid, and then polymerize this. But we can use this lactic acid for all chemistry. It means we can build new chemistry, we call it green chemistry. It means the bioplastics, we can produce polymer, but also other things. This planet, it means environmental capital trap. We have model nature. It's totally the best model, because like leaves of trees, going down to the ground. So we need to also understand what we can put to the compost or what not, and understand this process, this real model of nature. We have also a more sophisticated model where we can use, for example, genetic engineering. For example, now this cycle is sun, water, and CO2 can produce biomass. We can produce polymer and products. But why should genetic engineering not go by direct route? It means this polymer, this polyhydroxyalkanoate is produced by bacteria. If a bacteria can produce polymer, why do not this from plant? And also we have these systems of biotechnology which can help us to increase production, to change the substrate which is used for biotechnological processes, and produce also very useful chemicals which are very good for drugs, for example. This we call the white biotechnology. Okay. And also a very nice model is because our environment offers very successful patterns, design and structures. For example, biological polymers are used in tissue engineering. It was said today in the morning, it is used for samples, for biomaterials, and it's very, very important field of biomaterials, and these biological plastics have a very, very important role in this field. Okay. Then energy flows. Here, I took one example. This current process of production of polylactic acid. After 5-7 years, we will change. It means the ratio of renewable energy will be higher. And this process improvements is like here. We will use different sources of energy, but what is essential, instead of corn, instead of starch, we will use corn residue in cellulose. The process, this is probably Professor Metus will speak about biorefineries, so this is a kind of biorefinery. Okay? And humans and nature coexist. We must benefit from nature, but nature must benefit from us. And this slogan is very useful, back to nature. Yeah? And green materials are the way of the future. There is immense opportunity in developing new bio-based products, but the real challenge is design sustainable bio-based products. People and social capital trap. It's accept responsibility, and this is a global problem. We use renewable resources, and we in material science, material which consumption of these materials is very huge. We must change our thinking and go really to these renewable resources, because if we use renewable resources, the cycle of CO2 is 1 to 10 years. Instead of old, there is new carbon. Old carbon is 1 million, more than 1 million years. So, and also, this, if its consumption here only from atmospheric waste, during production something also here. This is a difference from fossil carbon, where all time the CO2 is emitted. And we have also already standards which can distinguish how much of polymer is from natural resources and how much is from fossil resources. Responsibility is also a question of society requires and benefits greatly having great access to quality food, health, and all the needs. And we have to educate people and also to prepare our legislative and certification of this program to our products and ingredients to verify open use of healthy materials and eco-intelligent design. Because polymers, usually we process polymers, we need many additives, many other chemicals. They also must be friendly to nature, to the human. The quality of life, about the polymers you can find very different stories, and we have to avoid such disaster like this picture, and we have to explain that we have very good products, very useful, very, very healthy. Okay. And sharing knowledge, it's very important point everywhere. And there are some ratings, what is good, what is not good. This is pyramid of Greenpeace, right? But everywhere these products, bio-based products are on first place. And this is the message of Einstein: more knowledge, less ego, less knowledge, more ego. And I will conclude with this, that we have already some environmental regulation which help us to go on in production of these polymers. The major limitations of present biological polymers are in the very high costs. Renewable resources-based biomasses are currently being developed. Further research should overcome the performance limitation. We work in our lab with mixtures of these biological polymers, which means we can control the properties and go with the price down using, for example, starch with product acid polyhydroxy alcohol. The sustainability journey, while we are not ready to declare victory, biological plastics are a good start along the road of sustainability in man-made packaging and other materials. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice mixture of technical and value covering. Questions of clarification? Any more questions? Very briefly.
The question about sustainability. Did you make the type of life cycle analysis, including the sustainability of input? Because the production of corn, for instance, you might get all this stock from different sources. Corn is pretty energy intensive and use pesticides, and then it is competing with food. So the more corn, the more soil we use for instead of stock for bioplastic, the less soil we will have for food.
I think more generally, each product has own this life cycle assessment and evaluation, and also the process processes, technology, variation. But also, this is question for future, because if there are many attempts to find a way how to convert cellulose.
Yeah.
And this is probably which can help, and the growing of this material will be the best.
Thank you. I think we're going to move on.
Okay, yes. Mr. Molavich, thank Professor Romeo and the organizers of WAAS for inviting me to be here and give a little contribution. This interesting, intriguing type of conferences. As a matter of fact, that really, even though my background as an industrial chemist and was teaching in the computer engineering for 30 years, 17 years in the computer science, the topics that were addressed this morning were a little bit away from my background. So, but anyway, I did appreciate, and I hope that I can give some complementary inputs to the many words that have been told this morning. So this is the laboratory where I apparently now am working as a professor free of charge, and then this is in a very green area. Is 10 kilometers away from downtown, from Pisa, and 10 kilometers away from downtown Rome, just half away. Only 5 kilometers away from the seashore. So every once in a while I can take the car and go to the beach during the spring and the summer and enjoy down there. So this is in this laboratory we now these days have been very much active in polymers or polymeric materials for environmental and biomedical applications. And I would say, even though that this laboratory is in a green area, let me say that I don't like the green chemistry and the green economy. And the reason is simple, because chemistry cannot be green. Chemistry is green. And then at least you can just turn it to be white, and never will be green. And the same as for the economy. This morning I was talking about black economy, and the economy cannot turn to be green. It can be white if it is open, if the business are open to the people. So this is the reason why I say that the green economy and green chemistry it will be turned in a black bag in the future. Forget it. It's like say that taking blood for an horseradish. There is no blood in an horseradish. You cannot, say that you can address green economy or chemistry. Forget about that. So let's keep going. Let's start from a graph that we already saw this morning a couple of times. This is the population that go up. Near 2000, we were about 6 billion. Now, after 10 years, we are about 7 billion. And it is expected that in another maybe 4 decades, we are going to reach about 10 billion people. So this means that we are going to need more food and feed. And then also the commodities that are necessary, for the daily life. And then among this, the commodity, a great share is uptaken by plastic packaging. About 40% of the consumption, and you will see the big amount. 40% goes in the packaging. And then we have to take care of this because it becomes waste, just soon after we have been used. The post-consumer material may be just a sort of damage for the environment and so forth. So we have to take care of it. And then, so let's see. We can see that it started from 1950, going to the perspective of 1915. We can see that the amount of the capacity of polymeric material production and the hence the relevant plastic can be about 330 million tons. So this is a really huge amount. And if you consider that 40% of this are going to be packaging, just single use, and then it means that about more than 120 million will go in the environment quickly. So if we consider what is the type of the material that is constituting the 300 million tons, you can see that at about 85%, I would say 85% is a full carbon vacuum polymers. They are not easily degradable. They're being just conceived, they've been produced to be durable, and so forth. And then, from the polyolefin, that polyethylene, polypropylene, polystyrene, polyvinyl chloride, and so forth. And the blue one, they're about 15%. These are electropolymers where you can have in the backbone oxygen, nitrogen, and so forth, sulfur, and that's it. And you can see this balance. And these are kind of, this material here is reluctant to biodegradation, can persist in the environment. If they are not engineered properly, persist for 100 years and so forth. So then you can have a real accumulation problem created by the waste. So this is the reason why, sometimes we have been talking about biodegradable polymers and so forth and everything. So this is the situation of the so-called polymers for renewable resources. And we have been talking about polymers from renewable resources and would say, okay, this could be good. That can coexist with the fossil fuel-based polymers and plastics, provided that they are not coming from resources that are conflicting with the food chain, because this is going to be a kind of criminal type of activity. I don't believe that we have to use, but we are concerned about that I want to be country. We don't have to use, just a corn or other wheat or other stuff that is just entitled to go either for feed or enhance the food. You can use a second generation of the renewable resources, the waste coming from second and third generation, because there is still a fairly high content of free energy down there, and then you can use. Okay, I do agree with this. This can be done, provided these are going to use waste material. So, and the tendency now is this. In any case, I want to recall your attention: 1.7 million against the 330 million in the year 2015 alternative of 4.5%. Peanuts, forget it. And then there is another point that we have to keep into account. This is, so I don't, as you will see, that, so this, as I said before, we are going to generate a lot of plastic waste, because about 40% goes in the packaging. And then we need to recover, because there is still a lot of free energy content in there. And then this can be done through mechanical recycling. This is good for semi-flexible and rigid material, for flexible material like carrier bag and so forth, and not so convenient. And then energy recovery. I believe in this, like they do in Japan. Some of the flexible material can be like a solid fuel. The content of energy is so high, and then you can use for incineration and production of energy. So this is, and also biological recycling. This is you have to keep in mind. This is the point. When we talk about biodegradable materials and so forth, this can be done also taking into account the several reasons that I showed you of them. And so let's say, before going through, I want to do a little bit of semantic on the nomenclature, because I am against the terminology of bioplastics, as you will see. Because bioplastic is a deceptive type, misleading type of concept. That's a maker for public publicity and so forth. It's not, sorry, illusion, but this is my opinion. The word is beautiful because it's valid. So you have to opinion, and you have just an opposite word. So this is, they go plastics. So plastics, what do you identify? The plastic identify a family of various man-made, finite and semi-finite items obtained by processing of polymeric materials, consisting of monomeric unique from monomers derived from fossil fuel feedstock. I do believe in this. I don't believe in fossil fuel feedstock. And then we say bio-based plastics. So instead of calling bioplastic for the bio-based, identify the family of plastic item obtained by mankind processing. Still, man is there of synthetic polymer material based on biotech building blocks, like this one, and biotech building blocks for natural feedstock, including items obtained by processing of chemically modified natural polymers like cellulose and so forth. So you want to process, you have to modify and blend or synthetic and natural polymers. And then the bioplastic should identify, because they are not identified, a family of plastic items directly projected and produced by nature. Have you ever seen any shopping bag coming from a tree or bottle coming from a tree? I didn't see it. I have not been lucky. Probably you have been lucky because you believe in bioplastics. So this is the point. And then there is the biodegradable. Biodegradable is the gathering of plastic innovation, the degradation result of biological degradation during composting to yield carbon dioxide, water, inorganic compound, and biomass. This, to yield the carbon dioxide, water, and the inorganic and the biomass. This is possible provided the carbon the material that you put in the compost, you have the carbon in a very reduced oxidation state. Because if it is in oxidation, with oxidation number 0, you are going to have a real problem because they are going to produce methane. So, and in that case, the compostable turned out to a kind of microbial combustion. You don't recover anything. So as I said before, because in the material there is still a content of energy, if you burn it, it's better to burn it in incinerator because there you recover the energy. In this case, you are going to pollute by CO2 production water and zero biomass. So this is the case. Okay, so this is the situation what happens, especially when you have polysaccharide-based materials like papers. If the papers go in a landfill, so we are going to produce from the paper under anaerobic condition, we are going to produce a lot of methane. Here, this is one. This is the final product. Don't look at the other. Look at this. CO4, CH4, and CO2. Methane at 20 times more dangerous than CO2. So the same. If some of the plastic bags that you call bioplastic go in a landfill because they are made by starch and polysaccharide, mostly polyester today, where the oxidation state of the carbon is not -2 like the polyethylene or polypropylene, but it's 0. In that case, you are going to get methane. So this is going to, instead of doing benefit to the environment, they are going to pollute the environment. So this is the point, the concept that we kept in mind, especially from the people that are using, this, as I said before, they're using the terminology of bioplastic because it's for the second for publicity. Last night I went to the coop. Okay, I went to the coop and I bought some food for my dogs. And I didn't have the shopping bag that normally in jute, and I asked for a plastic bag of a compostable produced by probably Norman from Matebeats. Do you know how much I paid? I paid 15 cents. This is a kind of Hardman robbery. Sure, this is because if this would be made of polyethylene, we paid 1 cent. Because it's 15 times more. Normal, and they also cook. They make a business. You know what? How much do gain by the kilo? Normal, 5 euros. And the same they do when they sell a kilo of shopping bags. A shopping bag weighs 10 grams. They weigh at the cook. They get 5 euros per kilo. This is I call it hardness, robbery. There's nothing in there. Sure. This is the point that people nowadays just fill his mouth with the green word without thinking that behind there is somebody who is cheating them. So this is and really fighting against the concept. Sorry about that because and this is the situation. So for instance, if you do a biodegradation in soil of a polyethylene, which has been oxidized and engineered, as I said before. The amount of biomass that you get is here, this one. If you do with the cellulose, the amount of biomass that you get is lower than the amount that you have in the blend. This means that if you do a biodegradation of material in soil, you are going to consume the humic acid that are in the soil. And this is not an invention, that's a story. So you know what happened in the central state of the United States, where they have intensive cultivation of corn, and for netting the corn, using for animals and so forth. And they were, afterwards, they were cutting the stems and withdrawing again. They did once, they did 3 times. Because in the stem there is a lot of cellulose, afterwards the soil became arid, because all the humic acid were consumed. This is the question. And then you produced a lot of CH4, methane, that went up to top in the sky. So this is another point that you have to take into account. This, for instance, is a structure which is similar to the structure that you can have in polypropylene. And in the case, that's a squalene. And then in the case where the carbon here is a -2 as oxidation number, and you do produce a lot of it. In here, the oxidation number of the carbon is 0, and you do consume the humic acid that you might have in the soil. So this is another point that has to be kept in mind. So this is the reason nowadays we distinguish polymeric material and plastic, relevant plastic item into classes. Hydrobiodegradable, those are the materials that do contain, can be natural or can be either synthetic, that do contain heteroatoms in the chain backbone, like polyesters, polyamide, polyurethane, and so forth. And then, so if you try to convert them, the natural to plastic, and this is a forbidden transition, like biostar in benzene, in an aromatic green. So this is not possible. Bioplastic doesn't exist. They are chimeric items. Don't use that word if you want to be my friend. You can talk about hybrid materials, where you can do a combination of a natural modified like cellulose, and when you modify like xanthogenate or acetate or so forth to make papers, or do a combination of both natural and synthetic, and you have an hybrid, and then you have an artificial type of bio-based plastic. Bio-based plastic is a terminology that can be accepted and used without cheating anybody. And then the oxo-biodegradable plastics are, like if you want to degrade plastic like polyhydrocarbon, like polyethylene, polypropylene, and so you have to oxidize first, otherwise they are reactive. The carbon-hydrogen bond, the carbon-carbon bond, they don't break down. There are no microorganisms able to, unless they are short, like C40, but if you have a C1000 or 2000, 3000, forget microorganisms. Yes, okay, I'm more or less at the end. Okay, so here is the only difference between hydro and the oxo. In the case of the hydro, you have uptake of water, and then you have functional carbon, and then you have uptake of oxygen. But the product in the end are the same. Okay, so this is the point provided. So here is a schematic of the mechanism of oxidation. This I just forget about this chemistry. The starting point is here, where you have a long chain, and then the arrival is a short chain that become applicable to microorganisms. And that can be chewed as converted to cell biomass, water, and CO2. And then this is an experimental fact. This is a conventional type of flexible film put in a landfill for 1 year. And this is the same materials loaded with an additive that do start the oxidation. And then you can see the breakdown in small fragment, oxidized, and become applicable to microorganisms. The same is occurring for these are standard without any additive, and these are those with additive, they break down easily. So then those fragmented, they become applicable to microorganisms. So here there is a comparison between the polyhydrocarbons. This is the ideal line for the material in terms of pollution and energy. The red balls are the polyolefins. And there's a paper, and you can see, so if you compare the polyolefin with the paper, you can see that the pollution of paper is very, very high. The same for aluminum, glass, and so forth. And then you can see that the polyhydrocarbon data are pretty close to the ideal situation. The point is, if you want to have material that lasts as long as is needed, so we have to re-engineer a little bit the polyolefins by addition of the pro-oxidant and pro-degradant material, as we have been doing currently in our laboratory. So here, the energy. So what I'm saying. Today they are, industrial processing, chemical processes, they are very better. They have zero waste. They don't really produce, in a high scale and so forth. And then what I say that it would be better for the future generation to save the fossil fuel feedstock for the production of chemicals. Nowadays, 90% of the fossil fuel feedstock they consume for the production of energy, automotive and heating in the process. So we should, the message that I want to convey to you is just that we need to find alternative energy resources based on biomass and second generation biofuel, say hydroelectric, say iodine, say hydrogen, and why not the nuclear? So this is the point. And so we would be able to save natural gas and crude oil for the future generation for doing chemicals with processes that have been, to today's pattern. So, and finally, let me come to conclude. Polymers are versatile material, very easy to be converted. Consumption of plastic is increasing as a result, and then nowadays plastic items are demanded as well to last as long as they sell. This is harmonized plastic waste management within municipal solid waste management have to be enforced. And then polymers for renewable resources have to be revisited. The second and third generation of resources have to be used as raw materials. And then better cost performance, balance desirable, as I said also by brand Lujan, bio-based plastics, and the re-engineering of synthetic full carbon backbone polymers. This is the point where we have been working heavily. Special polymers and effective route to environmentally renewable polymer material plastic has to be pursued. And then finally, seeking for energy source alternative to fossil fuel has to be stimulated. So finally, let me, first of all, before I go to the document. Okay, these are the notes that yesterday I went and buy some food in the cool, and so these are not appreciated. So let's see if there is any. And this is my recent group where normally, so we have the foreign students, of course, doctor, PhD. Now we have 4 Chinese, 1 girl, and 3 boys. And we have also foreign students from developing countries, 1 in Egypt and so forth. And then, so I wish to thank them for their activities that are doing. Thank you very much.
So, I think we moved right on to Stanislav. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, okay, technician. Okay. Thank you very much for being with us, because it's our chance now to be in a little bit diplomatic position, because we have heard our 2 friends, and I know them many years, and I like them to put on the, let's say, sort of balance of some meaning and opinions. But nevertheless, I would say we both are right, in the sense, just to well, I would like to speak just to give you some messages, because I don't want to take you too much time here. Speaking broadly on renewable feedstocks and variety of products coming from these resources. So, as already Emma mentioned, we are last 8 years producing, let's say, chemical industry, mostly based on one piece. This is crude oil or natural gas. So we developed a chemistry, an industrial chemistry, in right way. So there are several Nobel Prize winners for the discovery of new catalysts, optimizing of technologies. Now, sooner or later, the new era is coming. It's the change of concept of the feedstock for several reasons, and obviously this is not a green way in the sense that it will be very plain, but a sort of obstacles. But nevertheless, we are going to tackle and to fight to overcome the new era of the development of chemical and related industry. This is the point. So that's why just back to one before, what I wanted to say that obviously today is the situation as we said, but from renewable feedstock we can have biomass, especially agriculture, both for time being products, but also waste, especially waste, food, and so on. And we are focusing on various products which are fuels for transport, for energy, and also bio-based products. You see the nice wording. It's not bio-product, bio-based products. Next one. Now, what are the drivers for it? And very clear. The drivers are here for several years because we are trying to first fossil fuel depletion. Obviously, there are various studies showing, don't worry, we discovered new sources near to Norway, near to Greece, near to United States. So why you worried about that? It's for short-term solution could be okay, but for longer-term solution there is no discussion. Sooner or later there will be coming era in which we are going to be short of fossil fuel. So this is the clear drive. Then another one is energy security. We have some countries where rich on crude oil. There's a sort of weapon against other parts of countries using that as another very important point. Environment is also the issue, and also Emma mentioned we have some challenges for the future, some program which is full of obstacles, full of problems, but we have to upgrade. Then now we have stimulation of new and chemical industry. I call it green. I remember in one book of Oscar Wilde, there's a nice sentence: the fog in London could be gray, green, even black. So it fits very much with what we are saying here. So there are various points of views. So just this is a slang that we say that we have this renewable resources feedstock from. This is a very important issue, and we have to face the problem to decrease waste. And our dream is to have zero waste for transformation, complete use of waste and transforming the product. Another very important point, this was also discussed this morning, about the employment, about the development. So our friends, the economists, they used to say agriculture is a basis for the real economic development. This is a unique opportunity for renewable feedstocks to use feedstocks coming from agriculture, even not as a product for the food, but as a waste of this production, to use it for new type of industry. And obviously this will change social economic condition. We believe that there will be an improvement. There is a strong path. All these drivers are easy to be fulfilled or realized. It's a very difficult story, and I just will give us some messages for that. Where are the problems? Okay, next one. Okay, just speak a bit, 2 minutes about biofuels. This slide I use for ambassadors usually, but here is let's recognize a very professional audience. Nevertheless, this is a first generation. using transformation of agro products, you call this third generation. We call it third generation. You call it criminal acts. Okay, well, more or less we are there because this created a lot of problems worldwide, changing the price of food and so on and so on. So we have the second generation, which is mostly based on lignocellulosic feedstocks. Again, the hope is that to use mostly sort of waste, even from agro waste, or even from grain, you can use in many countries. You can use here, let's say, straw, grass straw, instead of birch. There are many countries. You remember, in Egypt, there was black sky, but that was sun oil. Was coming from the burning of rice fields burning the straw. Okay, there is a third generation. I don't want to enter here into detail of discussion and again some discussion of what is the third generation or not. Let's simplify this story, saying that the third generation is based on microalgae, or using microorganisms just to produce the, in this case, the resin. Well, that picture, what I took from Nature from 2008, is already optional. Today we have to put another one, which is fourth generation, and there is a very strong interest of to use genetic manipulation to produce photosynthetic algae. This is, as a nice example, is Greg Renter, who is a Nobel laureate, who had a good funding. It's not written here, but it's about 400 millions of dollars, if I remember well. And he put on the paper in the journals promise that will be within 18 months will be scale up for such a production. What is the main now, technologically speaking? What is the main advantages of that? While in the third generation, you have to stop that process, you have to clean everything, you have to separate, to take out part of this on. While in this one, which is very much as another dream, or this is the project, we are supposed to have a continuous process. So continuously, this microorganism should expel part of simply saying a little part of biodiversity. And then there are another ways how they are strongly working on new concepts to develop new generation of biofuel. Next one. Just this is a picture from Argentina. This is a field. There are many, again, promising parameters saying, okay, we can produce, let's say, sugars, lipids. We can produce on here 10 times yield higher than the classical standard what we grow here, let's say, soya. And also there is one or two factors. One is that usually these facilities are built next to thermal energy converters or classical thermal power stations, which use fuels going through this plant. Another nice thing for the first time is that we can use the wastewater. So we use wastewater because a lot of elements could be nice story. But then you ask why it is not so spread now for the large application. There are at least two problems, key problems. One is physical one. The diameter of this tube cannot be extended. Because if you extend it, you are going to kill your light, absorb the light, and in the center you have no efficiency of your photosynthesis. Second one is the price. So there are groups also in many countries, USA, Italy, foreign, that is working more than 20 years on that. They calculated the price, estimated price for now, cost, let's say, of the product, 1 kilogram, is about 5 times higher than the standard. So that these are obstacles that you cannot easily just resolve like this one. Well, just this is a message that we can produce from renewable feedstock, either from first generation or from next generation from the waste. A lot of products. I don't want to go into details because this is for a student of the third year of chemistry, and I don't need to go to here to show you how many products you can produce. And that's why we say this new chemical industry should be developed this way. Just one point, Emily, if I may. You are right, more or less, as we said, that agro products cannot use because for the production of, let's say, biofuels, simply because it is going to damage the food price. But there are some specific cases. You have some countries, they have overproduction. You have in other countries, and Argentina is a typical case, they are producing soya. And soya is a product in which you use protein part, the proteins they export to China. They are the biggest producer in the world for export. But probably about 20 or 15% is, let's say, liquid part. Just they use as a side product. So in these cases, it's still acceptable, I think, this concept of use, let's say, product. Next one. Okay, message was already given, so we can have a range of products coming from feedstock, bio-based feedstock, with the quantities which are millions of tons up to small quantities but very high added value. So this is the future game, also for many countries work on this issue, to have some niches in which they could work and to pick up the possible product. Just the message, this is from Malaysia, the picture, that they are obviously one of the biggest producers. Till last year they were the biggest producer of palm oil in the world. There's a lot of waste from the shell, from all the parts which is not directly used. And they are using and trying again produce oil as a primary product, and the waste as a secondary product to be transformed in biofuel, bioethanol, or other products. From this very complex picture, one this sentence: if we are able to transform the waste from agriculture today, it would be equivalent of more than 30% of world consumption of fuel for transport. It's not 100%, but still 30% is a big issue. So if we are able to just change it 40%, you would have really a revolutionary contribution to the. Obviously, it should be done in the economic, environmental, social, the correct way. I'm coming to this picture because this was a message from this morning, and also Lucia and Emma, they showed already what we intend under the sustainability. Because obviously the chemistry was very nice, but the question is immediately, is the process sustainable? And sustainable could be approximated, and Lucia, you showed a nice approach of Gredon. And again, we have economics, environment, social welfare society. Next one. Just as a image, what is going on, if we speak very, let's say, just to give you a message, this economic impact, economic aspects of some, let's say, third generation products of bioethanol or biofuel, second generation. And these ranges mean the cost, which would be for barrel. And this would be compared to actual prices where we are if we compare with the prices of gasoline from fossil resources. So I mean that. So if you see it is very volatile, it depends on the range is quite wide, but also it depends very much on the competitivity with the price of barrel. So if we have a very cheap product from crude oil, So it's almost no competition because are more expensive. If you go here, we have some of them already in the middle of the economic evaluation. Obviously, if the price of the gasoline from fossil resources is going to rise, then we have more and more economic chances to be covered. Next one. Good. Okay, that's fine. Now another message from environmental assessment. This is a life cycle study assessment of environmental impact. Yes, I'm going just to, if you give me 3 minutes, I will finish with 3 minutes. So message here is the following. We have here, let's say, fossil fuels. We can compare them with the first generation, and that's our various studies. What you can do, and this is the second generation. What you can observe here is that one thing is there's a big range of, let's say, anticipation of various studies or results. So you cannot define one study as like low, but you can have really, you will see the big differences in what the individual study for one case. Next one, please. But if you compare as a median, as a first estimate, fossil references with the next one, first generation, second generation, then you see there's a tendency to be, let's say, more environmental content. And this is a fact. Somebody asked, Virginia, probably you asked about this fertilizer, water consumption. So in all these studies, there is a consideration. Again, there should be a model. It's very difficult. It's very complex study. Okay, and social is a challenge for all of you, and I learned a lot this morning when we discussed and we presented the people coming from, let's say, this part of science and disciplines, showing how complex is the evaluation. Our friend showed what would be the correct parameterization of various aspects. Because the people and in science and also in the practical application would like to apply this model and to have some numbers at the end. And this is sometimes a risk, because once you are using model, then you are going to risk that your result will be, let's say, partnered by big error. But on the other hand, we need some line how to do this one. Just this is the example of one of the first example of second generation biography. This is Denmark, so we are not going to speak only on the let's say laboratory level, but really on the pilot scale, because similar are several in the United States. Next one. And that's why we have several challenges. Still, I strongly believe that for the progress, we need to involve all the world to work on that. So we cannot afford, and this was also shown this morning, that macroeconomy, only large companies could be winners in this, even if they really invest or not. But on the other side, innovation of small companies and small entities would be a good option. Obviously, still the question is sustainability. We need really to go more and more to next generation biofuel and also to semi-industrial scale. We strongly need R&D capacity. What I showed is only a beginning of the knowledge which we should further develop in science, in technology, and innovation. And this is another challenge, I would say, for our younger colleagues and friends. And we still need to more and more, I've been working for more than 15 years for UNI, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, trying to build capacity environments in developing countries. So I have this feeling, because what we see now, if you go to Africa, and you see what is happening now, so Brazil, sorry to mention those countries, but Brazil, some other countries are buying let's say millions of hectares and seeding palm and other, just to use that as a source of primary resources. So just to have very cheap products, okay, this on one side is okay because there is increasing labor and employment. On the other side, there is no or very little added value for them. So added value will be in those countries who are going to take this as a cheap. So I'm saying very often this is a danger of neocolonialism in this sense, because we are going to open systems on these. I'm again, as Emma, you are very much emotional. Somebody says bioplastic, so I'm emotional. Saying no, you must know these aspects for the let's say using developing countries as a cheap sources of the product. Next one. Okay, on our many edition, I promised to finish within 3 minutes, so this is the, let's say, last 30 minutes, almost 4. But we have still big question mark. Is sustainable really possible to reach? There are a lot of problems with feedstock supply and uncertainty. Technology should be developed. I mentioned now what I said before. Next one. Last two pictures. One is the message. We need more collaboration. Our center now, which we recently established on the basis of previous experience, is certainly in Bratislava. We would like to now put also some collaborators in Trieste, and also we are strongly using that experience and contacts and network in the past 15 years for several other countries, many other developing countries. Some still we call developing countries, but you cannot even say it now for Malaysia, for Thailand, for India, for China. It's very difficult to say. So we strongly also believe that this will be a good link to WAAS activities and consideration. And I'm very pleased that this morning, you know, we are from different disciplines, so I learned a lot this morning from other aspects. And I just hope that some message from our side, that's a purely technological, will be given to you. So at the end, we strongly believe that those who are not from Europe, I am not sure whether you know that, we have this hymn of European Union, our nation level, which means all the people will be brothers. I would extend that to global. Thank you very much.
My talk is about compromise between cost and performance, and I wish also to say a little bit about my background, because I'm very new to this environment, so it's the first time I talk in a section like this. And I'm a mechanical engineer, basically, trying to solve problems for others, as I was joking before, teaching engineering at the University of Trieste. But at the same time, I'm also president of a company that employs about 50 people nowadays, highly qualified people that develop software for design. And I'll basically, if I make a difference from what I've heard over the day, I will not talk from let's say a top-down approach, from the big problem to the detail, but I will discuss about the detail and how this has an impact at the global. So, in fact, the subtitle of my talk is Optimization, a Green Technology, maybe with a question mark. And I believe that, in fact, maybe our biggest energy resource is energy saving, much more than anything else. So doing things right and doing things better is definitely a way through, and our technology tools that help us doing that. So, but to explain, in fact, what we do, I mean, typically this is what we say in the company. So everybody's cost cutting, reducing time to market. I mean, these are buzzwords in the economy world. Basically, we think that being competitive is also having the better product, and better according to different metrics, not necessarily cost, not necessarily single performance, but the right compromise between the performances. So, in fact, this is what we say, and in fact, the vision is that we wish to perfect engineering, reducing complexity in design process, hiding complexity of simulation behind products, and bringing up what are the important numbers we want to judge upon. So, in fact, as a company, we're a pioneer in optimization and in making optimization a usable technology in the everyday design work. And I'll try to explain this through a very some sample, let's say, considerations. These are numbers you can find easily in the internet. 1,000 kilometers by an airplane is about 310 kilograms of CO2 production. So by car, with a train, with a washing machine, and with espresso, there is plastic capsule. So there is some carbon footprint in any actions of our living. So I'll take 2 typical days in Europe. This is something that frequently happens to anybody of us that is traveling for European pandemic. You go to Brussels, you wake up 7, 8 in the morning, take a cup of coffee, then drive to Venice, take the plane. About 1,000 kilometers. So when it's Brussels, at each stop, coffee is usually the way to spend time in the airport and in many other places. Then 300 kilometers, Brussels to Paris by a fast train, go to have another meeting in Paris and then back. Once back, laundry need to be made, so washing machine overnight, and maybe the wash up. Okay, but so. If I'm not going into the detail of what is done, but just please believe me that if you use an Embraer airplane, having a one-track count reduction using our optimization technology, you may save about 3 kilograms of CO2 out of that. It's not a big thing, but it's a tiny thing. That because you design your components better, you can do things so it'll be better. If you take a BMW 320 car, there's a 60% fuel reduction that was obtained simply because you coupled simulation to the engine working. And thanks to that, we have a fuel reduction which is significant. And it's still something growing. Technology continues to grow and to make things better. Then a copy. Well, actually, we work with EDI, that is here in Trieste, to reduce the mass of the plastic of espresso capsule, which makes some significant saving in plastic. Not waste of plastic, but at least to reduce the packaging. So a little bit of saving is also there. Train, Bombardier fast train, 15% traction energy, achieving 0.36 kilograms of CO2 reductions over the. So if we do the whole balance, well, this washing machine with an optimized drive motor that's also been somewhat optimized for consumption. Okay, all these have been optimized using our optimization technology, and the complete balance is about 4 kilograms, you would say. This is absolutely nothing. True, it is nothing, but if I multiply myself by the 7.6 million people that lives from Venice airport, and I believe I'm on the average, it is not negligible. So, of course, it's a compatible technology with existing technologies. We're not doing a breakthrough maybe on this, but doing things in the right way make decisions to be better, to be in a better shape. The lesson we learn is that you can apply this technology to small products with large volumes and you get significant savings. Medium of plastic capsules for coffee, for example, or aluminum capsules, which is a competitor, but let's go from that. Big products, which is in complex systems like an airplane, small volumes, but usually big savings. So, but this is only, as I say, learning. I wish to just make an example that when Bombardier decided to design their Zefiro 380 high-speed train using our software and the simulation part, which is based on CFD simulations, mechanical simulations, and so on. In fact, the goal is to reduce the energy consumption of the train, together with some other objectives. the objectives of, in fact, the challenges is to find the compromise between the aerodynamic resistance of the train, crosswind stability when traveling at 300 kilometers per hour on a train track. A crosswind may cause very dangerous force effects on the train. Maintain elegance and capacity of the train, and at the same time provide on the windshield at the front of the train flexibility for the driver, which is something that must stay there. So the optimized solution is not a single objective task, but is to find the right compromise between different costs and different performances. Okay, the results overall is in fact for the train is quite big reductions in aerodynamic resistance that at the end sum up to 10% energy consumption. Trains race also, so there's a lot of consumption of energy also in the acceleration spaces. Okay, so how this can be achieved? Extensive product knowledge at early stage of the design process. And this is done through feedback during different provision of expert knowledge at early stage, generation and validations by simulations and calculations, log calculations, feedback during the product life cycle, assessment optimization techniques, and finally, decision-making support to identify what is the right compromise of the solution that we want to identify. Okay, so I'll go fairly quickly about this, but there's the concept part, the design part, the validation part, and optimization where we look for the best trade-off between ideal and realistic solutions. Okay. So the systematic analysis of the entire system, whether this is a product or now trying to make it larger in terms of the view from the bottom of the product down to the top of the decisions, I mean, if we can model systems, although in an approximate way, and we take decisions on more than one objective, we can reach better decisions and better products. How? By means of, let's say, 3 stages, I would say. Design space exploration. So, for gaining increasing knowledge about the problem. I'm not talking now anymore about a train, a car, or a cup of coffee, but doing this indeed first to gain knowledge. When I have knowledge, I can apply optimization algorithms in order to find best possible solutions with multiple objectives and multiple constraints. Once I have these efficient solutions, I can do multi-criteria decision making, knowing that I cannot be at the best for all of these objectives. I need to find the right compromise. Good. So, an efficient decision-making calls for a multi-objective approach if we want to have sustainability in mind of our process. Knowing that no objective can be improved in the Pareto frontier without reducing another. So if we look at this from and you cannot say a priori what is best, because which is better than the other objective. It depends subjectively on the level of compromise that you want. If you are going to buy a car and you have a family, you probably look first also at the storage in order to be able to carry all the goods you need. And you won't even look at a sports car because that doesn't fit your needs. Still, the 2 cars are efficient or might be the best car for someone else. So the same happens at these levels. So these are the so-called Pareto frontier, which is very well known by economists. Pareto was an economist of the 1800s centuries. In fact, he says that there are efficient solutions. From that efficient solutions came the name of efficient markets, where markets are efficient. And finally, we end up probably focusing only on a Pareto curve of two objectives: risk-return combinations for capital. So you have a high risk, high return. Wherever you choose, your solution from the financial point of view is more or less the same, because you will lose and win according to where you are. But there's a lot more behind the concept of Pareto dominance. A lot more, which is related to the fact that the matrices are not necessarily linked exclusively to economical measures. Which means that, in fact, efficient decisions must include other matrices. So, for example, social impact, sustainability, carbon footprint of what we are designing. And the decision has to be taken consciously in order to say, well, this is the impact that we are going to have if this is our decision. And that is the level of compromise that we can meet. So, is this a dream or an opportunity? Well, up to you to answer, of course. This is not, it would be too good if I could give this answer. But actually, can we model systems, a social system or economical system, in order to analyze what-if scenario? If yes, can we add other matrices out of our decisions than financial profit and financial risk? And can we then take decisions by finding the right compromise between these correctly estimated costs and performances with an answer to Google? Not only one cost, not only one performance, but more than one, in order to be, say, rational in what we decide. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What we do have here at 6, we do have 10 minutes for either technical questions or philosophical and ethical reflections on what you've heard. This has been a bit of a dump of science and technology onto the society and economy, so the floor is open to, I see hands. Yes?
What I hope is a very simple question. The first is another simple question to the last one. I mean, why this obsession with degradation of plastic, biodegradation? This simply re-releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, possibly also methane into the atmosphere. Wouldn't it actually be better if your objective is to contribute to climate stabilization? Why not recycle the plastics and reuse them, or simply bury them? If they're so stable, isn't this a very good long-term store of carbon to get rid of? I'm just puzzled by why. Is it simply that the concern with litter outweighs the concern about climate change? And then, I mean, I admire your optimization. I'm fully in favour of these optimizations, but it cannot really be justified in terms of the CO2 reduction. 5 kilograms that you save in a day commuting to Brussels, in fact, even if the carbon price was $100 a ton, 100 euros a ton, that's 50 cents. We're nowhere near being able to justify that sort of optimization by pricing carbon. So, I mean, isn't there some other way? I mean, the alternative must be to try and find other justifications for that sort of optimization. Sure, the cost justifications probably do work, but if you were concerned with carbon reduction, I think you'd do better to pay someone to bury the carbon, and it would be a lot cheaper.
So are there other questions before we... All right, let's have the answers and responses from 2 of you, I think. Yes? Yeah.
If I understood well, you have been talking about the possibility of recycling, mechanical recycling of the material. So even the materials that contain pro-oxidant, polygranate additive, or either flexible, semi-flexible, rigid, they can be perfectly recycled, mixed with the virgin material,
I have a report not made by my laboratory, but independent laboratory, one from UK, another from Canada, another from if you like, I can tell you that this is stated that this material containing additive, the additive simply are green additives because they are normally sold of fatty acid, salt of manganese, iron, coal. Nothing, just simple stuff. And they, when you recycle, you have to keep in mind that probably some of this material is still down there, and then you have to add, antioxidants and so forth. As usual, when we upgrade, like in PET, where PET is one of the material which is, recycled, very much. Polyhydrocarbons a little bit less, but anyway, they can be done without any problem. There are reports down there, that's not for myself, but I do believe that this is true. Because there's nothing magic in there. They're simple stuff and so forth. They are not toxic, the additives are not toxic. This has been proved by independent laboratory, like that laboratory in Ghent by there is a laboratory. Eventually, if you like, I can send you this information. No question. And then, for instance, this material can be used for daily covering or lantern. Instead of using, 30 centimeters of soil, you can use, and you avoid the attack of seagulls, any other, rats and other stuff. And then you cover it, and you can also keep the smell of the lantern, put it in, shopping bags and so forth. There are a lot of items that can be used. And then you, depending upon the amount and the type of additive that you load in the batch, in the master batch, you can predict what will be the life. Well, it can be 1 year, can be 2 years, depending upon. So this is really, there is a lot of study done on this.
Thank you.
So let's a bit skeptic, but anyway. Okay, sorry.
You have a response?
Well, I do have, of course. This is only one metric. We just measure the effect on the usage. There are a lot of other reasons for which design optimization techniques are used. First of all, is to fit with the regulations. There's laws that seem to oblige the car manufacturer to reduce the grams per gram of CO2 produced per kilometers traveled. So that the fact that the system is engineered like that helps in meeting the requirements, of course, helps in meeting the requirements of performance of the system. And in fact, you would easily say, for example, if you take the coffee part, there are several types of plastics that are not purchased by the company, which is probably much bigger, advantage than the CO2 reductions out of that. So I totally agree with that. My message is that doing things better has an impact also in CO2 reduction. I could also mention that our optimization software was, for example, used by the Department of Energy in the US to design the carbon capture initiative, to design the chemical systems in order to for the carbon capture initiative that was funded during last year. So it's not a matter of that. The true message out of here is that if we are taking decisions, there are today means to take decisions in a rational way and possibly comparing numbers. So formulating a problem in terms of what are the 3 degrees of freedom of your system and what are the measures that you're going to look at is a fundamental step. Then you can build a complete process, either with a simple formula or with a very complex simulation of environment.
One of the questions is about the message, because
although this is a small group, or not half anyway, there is an attempt to sort of summarise, and Anthe has been sitting there quietly at the back because, among his other responsibilities, he's the rapporteur for this session, so I would like to give him an opportunity to say, from your perspective, is there a message that you are summarising?
May I just add one sentence to your question, because I understood that you asked more generally whether any plastic we need at all degradable plastic. It was your message, why not to use always mechanical or thermal incineration in general?
Or some incinerate. I mean, anything that can avoid the carbon getting back into the atmosphere must be better. But
you have to face the problem. So landfilling, it's very difficult to recycle anyway. That's why the option of degradable, biodegradable polymers, plastics is an issue. So these are the drivers for that. So we cannot think that everything could be solved by simple incineration, or if you not by landfilling. This is the point.
And after, did you have a thought?
Well, I'm not going to try to summarize, but I'm just trying to sort of map this on the general discussion when we talk about values of nature. In our context, in the community that we're working with, is that they have this notion of total economic value, and they have use values, unused values, instrumental values, and strategic values. So I'm looking at a plastic example. So there are a number of values that come in terms of, it's all purely instrumental. And so in terms of the plastics, the thing that they're looking at is avoiding for, I guess, carbon, which is what you want. Then in terms of the conflict, in terms of the trade-offs between aesthetic, in terms of you just don't want plastic to be seen, and then there's this notion that people just don't want plastic. They just don't like plastic. And trying to monitor, it's sort of saying what are the costs and benefits. And so I'm kind of grappling in terms of how this would fit into that general discussion of how do you value nature. And I'm kind of a bit of a loss as to how would this contribute towards that. I can see like the optimization, you're already assuming rationality as a prerequisite, and most people are now coming to the conclusion that many people do not make rational decisions, and in fact it's quite irrational, especially when it comes to the environment and nature, and they are willing to forego purely from a cost-benefit analysis. So how does that fit within? But multi-criteria can do that, because one of the objectives would be purely environmental, and then you would basically do the trade-off analysis in terms of that. So when you mentioned multi-criteria optimization, that's an interesting because you have various different objectives, but you're going to weight those objectives according to a preference, according to the societal preferences. So I'm just kind of looking at, in terms of summary, I'm sort of seeing that this is basically internalizing the externalities within using economic terminology. I think that a lot of the plastic examples were primarily trying to internalize those externalities, and then from there sort of see what people are putting as a value for nature, but purely from still an anthropocentric and very monetary base.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, I'm just responding to your first sentence of saying that efficiency is maybe the cheapest thing. Maybe the cheapest thing is to educate us not to use these products. So that, as you said, there would be a subsidy, for example, to setting up communication systems. You don't need to travel after all. And if we educated kids in school to use throwaway plastic items, it'd be interesting to know what the cost rate are.
I think we're about out of time. I'd like to say that, speaking for myself, I learned a lot this morning that I didn't know about, and I learned a lot this afternoon that I didn't know about, and I'm going to go away and think about how to build bridges between the two, which will take me a little while, I think. But thank you, our speakers, and thank you for your participation.